on the lab, CSS practice. So let's do super quick review and then go a little bit into some other areas that you may not have seen. So as we know, CSS is used for customizing the presentation, the styling of the page, and the layout of the position elements on the page. And the general syntax, so CSS is made up of rules, and each rule is made up of a selector and set of declarations. So the selector, there are many selectors. So we have seen the basic 3 selectors. We can select by element name. We can select by class name. So we create a class, prefix with a dot, define our style, and go ahead and apply it to any element. How do I apply a named style to an element? By assigning the class name to the class attribute of the element. And then what's the third selector we have? The ID selector. So 3 selectors, element selector, class selector, and ID selector. ID not very commonly used, so, but just you need to be aware of it. So those are the basic ones, but there are some more advanced ones that you also need to be familiar with. And these, we've seen them last time. I'm just going to super quickly go through them just as a revision. And don't forget, we have a quiz next session, last 10 minutes for you to revise this and come along and do your quiz. So in here, we have, for example, in this scenario, we have a div, comma, p, and we will put some style in there. So that style you define will be applied to div and will be applied to p. So whenever the browser sees div, it will apply the style. Whenever it says sees p, it will apply the style. So whether it's div or a p, the style will be applied. Now, if I put a div space p, what does this mean? Sorry. No, this is all p and div. This is all p and div. No, in here, p inside, yes. P is a descendant or a child of div. So if we have a p by itself without being inside the div, either it's a direct child or it is a grandchild or grandchild, it will be selected. I think let's super quickly do this, super quick. We will not spend a lot of time on this. So if I come along here, just super quickly, I can say here div. So this is a div content, and this is a p, and this is a p content. And here I can come along and say, oh, I want whenever I see a div or a p, I'll go ahead and make the color blue. Colon. Yeah. So this is div or p. This style will be applied. So let's save. Let us run this just to make sure you get the idea. So here, either it's a div or a p, the blue color will be applied. Now, if I say p div space p, what does this mean? It's a p that is descendant of a div. So if I save and come along, let me just I come along here, you can see it does not apply to this. Why it does not apply? Because we don't have a p inside the div. Let me just try to put them side by side. There it is. Okay. Here it is. Where is the browser? Here it is. Okay, very good. You see this is not, this style was not applied. How to apply it? If we want to apply it, then this p must be inside the div. So in here we say a P, if a P is inside the div, go ahead and apply the style. You see now this style was applied. Yeah. Now, if I say, sorry, greater than, I think I have some other ones that are, so this is still applied. So it says here, when you see a P, that is a direct child of P. Direct child, it's not a grandchild or grandchild. So if I come along and put this one inside another, let's say, article, and move this P inside an article, that rule will not be applicable. So if I say, you see, it was not styled. This paragraph was not selected because I'm saying a P must be a direct child of div. Then it will be selected. So that is basically the summary of this. So combined selectors, if I put comma between the two elements, it says either a div or a P. Here, with space between them, it says P, but is a descendant of a div. It must be with it inside the div. Either it's a child or grandchild. And in here, I'm saying only direct children. If the P happens to be grandchild, then it will not be selected. So those are called combined selections. So for example, this style, what this style is doing, what this selection is saying. Yes, thank you. So if you see, I'm telling the browser, wake up, focus with me. Whenever you see an A, not by itself, an A that is a child or grandchild, a descendant of li, list item, then go ahead and make the text decoration none, which means don't put that underline on the actual text. So let me just show you super quick. Here is an example. Last example on this. So let me put this one here. So I'll come along here and I'll put a href, let's say google.com. It doesn't matter what I put in here. And then I'll come along and say Google search. So if I save, you see this one has an underline. Although this rule says don't do underline, make the text decoration none, which means I don't want the underline on the link. But this rule does not apply to this anchor. Why it does not apply? Because it must be a child of the list item before we apply the rule. So if I come along here and say unordered list item, and within this list item, I put this link. Now that rule, this will be selected. So if I save, you can see here, it doesn't have the underline. Yeah, so it's still a link, but it doesn't have the underline. So basically, this is called combined selectors. Is clear? Okay, another type of selectors is called attribute selectors. Attribute selectors. Already explained before. So let's see what this means. This first selector, what does it mean? What I'm telling the browser to do. Very good, yes. So in here, I'm telling the browser, go ahead and look up and select for me all the anchor tags where the href attribute starts with HTTPS. And in here, I'm saying, go ahead, look up for all attributes, all anchor tags or links where the href ends with .pdf. And here I'm saying, go ahead, select all links where the href contains QU and do something to it. So a practical example could be, by the way, every little concept there is an associated example. So these are attribute selectors. Here they are. So for example, in here, for example, what I'm saying, if you see an input of type button, I want you to make the margin top 1 rem. I will explain what this 1 rem means. Make the background this cornflower blue and make the color white and so on. So here, any input of type button will be, this style will be applied to it. So this is called attribute selector. So I have another one here, which says, whenever select for me all the anchor tags where the target is equal underscore blank, which means the link, when I click on it, it will open in a different tab. Or, you see, or I put comma. Or if the href of the link starts with HTTPS, I want you to go ahead and add a background image, this background image. Do not repeat it. I will explain what this means. Position it on the right top and put a bit of padding on the right side. So let me show you what this means. Let me just move this one. So I'll go ahead and open this on a live server. So you see here, can you see this icon here is added to this link, because this link, if I inspect this, so I inspect this. So this link has an href that starts with HTTP. And this other link has two, like either it is HTTP, href starts with HTTP, and the target underscore is equal underscore blank. Target equal underscore blank means when I click this link, take a look at this. When I click this link, it opens in a separate tab. That's what that underscore blank means. Okay, now, so I'm telling the browser, I want you to go ahead, put this background image, this image. If I don't put this background repeats equal no repeat, so this icon will be repeated in the background of this text all along. It will be repeated to cover the whole background by default. But I don't want this because it covers the whole text. So I say background repeat, no repeat, please don't repeat. Now, if I don't put this top right position, you see it put the icon on the left top position. I don't want that. So I'll go and say, no, I want you to put the background, this background image, put it on the right top. And then finally, if I don't put the padding, if I don't put some extra space after the link, the icon will be on top of the text. So I'll say, please go ahead and add some padding, some extra space after my link. So that's basically the idea of attribute selectors. Is clear, attribute selectors? So select elements where attributes, particular attribute, either in this case starts with or ends with or contain. And if there is none of these, where this equals this value. Attribute selectors. The other selectors, we call them pseudo classes. So let me show you some examples. So pseudo classes are, I apply some style when certain state is true. For example, I'll come here and say, whenever you see an anchor tag and the mouse is over it, when the mouse is over it, I want you to go ahead and make the background. I want you to make the background light green, for example. Or light green. Save. If I come here you see here any link when there is an when the mouse is over it, that style is only applied when the state is true, when the mouse is over it. Or, for example, let's say if this, let me say A, if it was visited before, if the link is already visited by this user before, I want you to make the background light gray or gray, let's say. Let's save. Let me visited. No. Let me choose another one. Just a second. Visited active. Sorry. No, the browser, I'm not sure why it is behaving like this. From the browser history, it should know whether it was visited before. Okay, just a second. Don't worry about it. Let's choose another. There are so many attribute selectors out there. Not attribute selectors, pseudo classes. Those are called pseudo classes. The href hover over is definitely one of the famous ones. Let me see if I can. Let me show you another one. Very, very, very important. It only recently has been introduced, called has. So basically here we have has. Just a second, here it is. So in here, what I can say is, if I have a, let me run it, and then I can explain it. This is also very popular, very super powerful attribute selector, sorry, a pseudo class selector. So in here, I'm saying, if you find, let me put H1 here. Sorry, just a second, here it is, H1. I will explain this shortly. Just give me 1 second. All right, here it is. Yep, H2. So what I'm saying here, if you find a div and that div has either H1 or H2, I want you to make the background color pink. If the div has a paragraph, I want you to make the background color lime green. If it has a paragraph that is empty, empty is another class select, pseudo class, it's another pseudo class. Pseudo class means it's almost a class. So it's kind of as if I went ahead, you see this empty, as if I went ahead here and added, sorry, as if I went here and added class equal empty. So this is the class, but I don't put this class. So I can just say if P is empty, means it doesn't have any content. So this is called pseudo class. It's almost a class, or as if there is a class assigned to that element called empty. So that's how I prefix it with this column. Yeah. So these pseudo classes are already built in the browser. The browser knows them. So you just need to be familiar with the common pseudo classes and make use of them. So let me go back and let me explain it one more time here. So let me save. Let me run this one. Here it is. So you see these boxes are styled differently based on descendants element based on child element. So I'm coming to a div and say, if the div has either an H1 or H2, the background will be pink. If it has a paragraph, the background will be lime green. If it has an empty paragraph, the background will be fire brick. If it has this class called fancy paragraph, I make the color white and the color, this fancy color, and then the background white. So in here, for example, if it has an anchor as a direct child of div, I want the background to be steel blue. So I'm styling the parent based on the presence of certain child. Yeah, it's clear this has very, very powerful. So I'm selecting the parent based on the presence of certain child elements. Let me show you another example, more realistic example. So in here, the styling will be basically I put the header followed by the text. But in the card, the header followed by the text. But if the card has an image, then I put the image and beside it is the text. So whether I have an image or not, the styling is different. So this will be one beneath the other. But if there is an image, it will be side by the image on the left and then the text on the right. Okay, and if there is some icon, I'll have some more spacing compared to this style. So I may style them differently, whether there is an image or there is an icon. This is a little bit more realistic example. Okay, those pseudo classes, is it clear? Pseudo classes. Those are built-in. You can think of them as built-in attributes or built-in classes that you can use to help you select elements. That they are either on a certain state, for example, with the mouse hover over a link, for example, I go ahead and change the style. Or more importantly, this is a recently added one. I select elements based on its descendant. So as I showed you different divs, and I style them differently based on whether the div has a paragraph or whether the div has an image or whether the div has a header and so on. Sorry, can you say again?
They want for opposite of has selected for the descendants based on what parentage.
I'll choose the descendants based on what the parent is. So that is already covered by the combined selectors. This is already covered by this. So I select P's that are within a div. Already covered by this. Yes. So this one, I select the P's where that is within a div. So the other way around, I select the divs that have a paragraph. It will be div has. So you will do this one. You will do this way. For example, in here, I select a card that has a media. Then I do some different style. I select cards that have an icon and do different style. Or in this case, for example, I style the div differently if it has an H1 or H2. If it has a P, I style it a different way. So in here, I'm styling the parent based on the child. Yep. Okay. The other selectors, those are called pseudo classes. Those are called pseudo classes. Another type of selectors, we call them structural pseudo classes. Very, very important. Especially, let me show you a concrete example using this zebra table. Zebra table means I have alternating colors on my table. So let's take a small example here. Here it is. So if I come to my pseudo, yes, let me run it and I'll show you what this means. And then I will explain how it is achieved. So you can see here I have a table and I have these alternating colors, crayon or a light blue followed by light yellow and keep repeating. So the way I achieve this, very, very easy. So I'll say, let me just, it does not apply only to table rows. It can apply to any element. So let me just keep it simple first. So in here, I'll say tr and child even. If the tr happens to be an even row, it will get a light crayon as the background color. And if it's an odd, if it is an odd child, it will get a light yellow. Now the first one, the first child, and child one, or another way of writing this. Another way of writing this is first child. The first child will have the color white and the background is gray. Can you see it here? The color is white and the background is gray. Now the last three rows are styled differently. So I can say, either I can say, here it is, either I say last child, this is the last child. And this one is the like basically the first before last. Basically the first last, the first before last, and the second before last, and the third before last. So in last child. So in child start from the start of the, let's say in this case, the start of the table. And end last starts from the end. Yeah. Another way of doing it, another more sophisticated way, you can see here these two rows, because they are related to exams, I styled them a bit differently. I made the color white and the background is kind of orange. So how do I achieve this? So what I did, there are many ways of doing it, but one elegant way of doing it, you see here, I put here my own custom attributes. So if you have your own custom attribute, you should prefix it with data dash. Can you see here? Data dash exam equal true. And then what I used, what do you think I used here to select this? I used an attribute selector. You see here for CSS, here it is. I said tr, if this data is exam equal true, I want you to make the color white and the background red. So using a custom attribute. Yes, please. You can, of course, you can, but this is much more sophisticated because I may do this programmatically later on. You will see. You can, of course, use class. You can have a class, but this is much more. It's much more elegant. Of course, I can have a class here called exams, for example, and I can apply this. One way of doing it, no problem. You can do that if you wish. And I can come here and say, go to my yep, and I can come here and say class equal exams. Yeah, no problem. I can do that, of course. But this is a more elegant way of doing it. I can add a data attribute and use that to do the selection instead of using a class. So either way will achieve the same goal. Okay, so basically in here it says, I'm telling the browser, go ahead, select TRs that has data is exam equal true. Any data, any table or row that does not have this property, or if it has it and it's false, it will not be selected.
Exam equals false when it selects everything else?
No, it will not. It will not select anything. So if I say here false, save, it will not select anything. So here it is. it will not select anything because none of them has data dash exam false. I have to explicitly go and assign it to, let's say I come here to one of these guys, and I'll say here, like for example here, data dash is exam false. Explicitly, I have to add it. Otherwise, it's then this one will match that rule now, that selector. So if I come back here, you see here the first one is matching. Yep. So those are called structural pseudo classes. Structural pseudo classes: first child, last child, end child. End child will start counting from top. And there is the end last child will start counting from the bottom of the elements. And there is the odd and even if you want to have that zebra kind of like styling. This is not limited to tables. Any list of elements. So let me just show you super quick here. I have this list. Can you see it here? OL, I can go ahead and say, whenever you see a list item, end child, if it's odd, I want you to make the background light yellow, light coral one, for example. Okay, save this. And if I come here, you can see here did I put odd? Yes, the odd ones, the 1 and 3. The 1 and 3 has this different background. Is clear? So this end child or structural pseudo elements are not specific to tables. Any list of items, you could go and style them based on their position in that list. Based on their position in that list. For example, if I want to select the first list item and make it blue, how do I do so? Li first child. Li first child. And I can say color blue. You can see here the first child is blue. Yep. So those are called structural pseudo elements. Structural pseudo elements. The bullets, because those are yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, those are of the whole thing. Yeah, that is the default behave. That is the default behave. Yeah, the background does not stretch all the way there. I have to explore it. This is the default behave. I'm not sure. We'll explore it. Just exploring it together, it may take some time. If you're interested, I can explore it and let you know. All the tricks are available. You'll be surprised. CSS is so powerful. You can do whatever it comes to your mind, almost. Sure. Sorry.
The attributes. You make your own attributes.
When you make your own attributes, those are strings. Those are basically considered as strings. So all the values that you assign are strings. But later on in programming, later on when we see JavaScript, I can read it as a string and then convert it to other data type. But here it doesn't really care too much. So I can put it here like false, like this, no problem. And I can come here. But all of them are considered string. Yeah, you could do that, but that's not the purpose of this. I mean, the editor or the CSS will not. You have to control that. So even if you make it true and false and you make a mistake, so here, it will not You will not basically know. It doesn't really care what this value is. Yeah. So let me see if it will still first work. You see this still working, whether I make it a string or not a string. But attributes in most cases are strings. These attributes are strings. Consider that string. All right, what else is there? Last ones is called pseudo elements. Pseudo elements, we already seen them. We have maybe 3 or 4 pseudo elements. The most useful one is this one. If you recall, we did it last time together. So I can come to this code, create a code class, and before I have before and after. So instead of putting this double quote on the content itself, I add it using a style. And this way, this is the reusable. Whenever I have some code on my page, I can come along and apply the class equal code. And then if I go ahead and run this, here it is. Where is the browser? Okay, let me run this. Okay, so let me. First one, oh, thank you. Now you see here, this is basically, this is what this before is doing. Those are called pseudo classes, pseudo elements. I can come along and add some content before and some content after. So before and after. So in pseudo classes, we put single colon, and in pseudo elements, we put double colon. Yep. This is one. The other one that you can do is you can also do, I think, first letter. So let's just do another paragraph here. Paragraph. Here it is. Paragraph. No, sorry. This is a P. And I can come along here and say, whenever you see a P, first letter, I want to make the font size 60 pixels. And I want to make the font weight bold. And I want to make the color brown, for example. Okay, let's just give it a try. You see here, the first letter is styled differently. Okay, maybe I don't want for all. I just want the first paragraph. So I can say body, the first paragraph in the body. Okay, I can do that. Didn't like it. First of type, yes. I was hoping this will also work. No, it didn't like it. Okay. Body first of type, the first P that you see. Okay, it didn't like it. Oh, I see, because this one is inside the form, that's why. Inside the form, yes? It was inside the form. Still. Let me try this now. No, didn't like it. Okay, yes, this is a P direct child of body. Direct child of body. Yes, P direct child of body. Oh, yes, this is why it didn't work. So P, and then here, first child, first type of. This will work. First type of. Yep. Anyway, so what I wanted to really emphasize on, this is called, by the way, it should be double colon. We have first child, first letter, first line, and we have before and after. Those are called pseudo elements. The most useful one, of course, is this before and after. And this is a realistic example of having a code. And first letter also nice. If you have an article, you will see a lot of articles like starting with fancy way of doing the first letter. You can select the first letter using the first letter pseudo element. So those are selectors. Any questions so far? All right, so you can see selectors are a big topic. So we started with the simple one, element selector, class selector, ID selector, but there is more to it. You can combine selectors. You can have attribute selectors, pseudo classes, such as h over has. We have structural pseudo classes, such as first child, last child, end child. And we have pseudo elements, such as before and after, adding some content before and after, or styling the first line or the first letter differently. So you need to play with this to really master it. Now, those are the selectors. The next skill you need to learn is the common properties that you can change, the common properties that you can change and style. So the basics, first thing is the basic text styles. Those are we are familiar with from our editing of Word or editing of PowerPoint. So you can go ahead and change the color, you can change the font size. You can put, in terms of font size, you can put any value like this. So if you come here, oh, sorry, here. For example, here you could put a value, any value that you wish, similar in CSS. So it's either it's points or pixels, or you could use a constant that comes with CSS, extra small, x small, large, extra large. For the font family, usually you specify comma delimited list of fonts, and the first one that's available on the browser will be used. And we have font weight, you can have bold, normal. You have also font style, whether it's italic or oblique or normal. You have text decoration, whether it can be underlined, overlined, or lined through, like it's crossed. And you have text aligned, left, right, center, justify. So those are text-related properties. Now for the font size, it could be fixed, as I said. It could be font, points, or pixels, but it's always a good idea to make your font size or to make the sizing relative to the fonts of the root element. Let me show you. So we have two measures or two units of measurements when it comes to size that are recommended rather than having a fixed size. So you can do EM or REM. So let me show you through an example, much easier. So if I come to this example here, and let me just take this paragraph itself. Okay, so let me take the first paragraph. The paragraph that is a direct child of the body. Paragraph that is a, oh, sorry. Paragraph that is the direct child of the body. And I want to make the font size. I want to make the font size 2 rem. Font size 2 rem means I want the font size to be 2 times the font, the default font. So let me show you. So if I come along, run this, let me run it. Here it is. And yeah, let me save. Yep. So the font, this font size is 2 times the default font. And the default font, let's come here to settings and let's search for font. Here is my font. And let me change this font size. Let's say 28, 30. Let me just inspect this guy. So this is 2 times the default font size. So that's one measure, 2 rem. And let me show you another measure. Another measure is, here it is. If I come along and I'll put this one inside the div. So here is a div. And let me put this here. And now what I will do, I want 2 times the font size of the nearest parent. 2 times the font size of the nearest parent. So let's put this div. Now this will not be selected. Let me just put here first child. Hopefully this will select the first paragraph. Okay, so in here, if I make this style, of course not recommend, this is just for demonstration. And I'll make this font size, let's say 24 points, for example. So if I come back here, so this font, here it is, inspect this. This is 2 times the font of the parent. What is the parent of this paragraph? The div. Here is the div. So the div, you see, if I change this one to 64, or let's say 34, so this font is 2 times this. If I change this one to, let's say 6, this is 2 times the parent. So these units of measurements, you will find them everywhere, very commonly used in CSS, not only for the font size, but also for other things, such as the border. Let's say here it is. So if I come here and come and say I want to make a border, instead of putting 8-pixel border, I will make it half the default font, half the default font. 0.5 or 0.5, red and solid. Yep, let me see. I think, did I save? Let me see. The border, what is the syntax of the border? Sorry? Okay, solid. The color first? Is it the color? The size first. Okay, so I had it correctly. Okay, let me, forgot the syntax, unfortunately. Just okay, just because of the time. So here is the okay, 1 pixel solid red. Okay, so basically the second one is the type of border, which is dashed or solid line. So let me solid and then red. So I want the border to be half the default size of the default font size, half the default font size. So let me save. And you can see here, you see this one is half the default font size. So if I go ahead and increase the fonts, the border will increase according to the font size. So this is the recommended sizing of anything in CSS, whether it is a font size, whether it's a padding, a border, margin. You will find lots of places or lots of examples or lots of people favor relative sizing rather than absolute sizing. Relative sizing, absolute size. So you can make it relative to the font size of the default font size. That's rem, the rem unit of measurement, or you can make it relative to the parent font size using the EM. And rem is most commonly used rather than EM. Okay, that's all I will leave you with. Inshallah, next time I will focus on the border model. How do we control the padding, the margin, the border? And also we will focus more on the layouts using Flexbox and Grid. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Borders relative to the size of the div.
No, as a unit of measurements, to my understanding, either it can be absolute or relative, either real no, it's relative to the field stuff. Yes, please.